London News. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, whoever you are in the world. Welcome to London News. That's Hobart in the background. And welcome to the land of criminal politicians, the world. The world of no law. And that's where we have no law, just commerce. Anyway, this is a video that's going to explain that a little bit better than I can. This guy is a South African chappie, and he lives in Queensland, I believe. This video is 4 years old. Someone sent it to me. I don't know where I got it from. So I'll write down cover copy just to cover the copyright situation. But it does explain from the birth all the way through to your death, the birth certificate, everything you really want to know in simplistic language. And I thank this gentleman. I'm not too sure where it came from, but it's a 4-year-old video, and I do thank whoever put it together. Don't forget to support the Common Law Court. We have a court case on the 2nd of December. A guy called masquerading as a commander during the last silly season we had. Anyway, indicted and now up before a jury of his peers. London News, sign off. Thanks for watching, guys. See you all again soon. Bye for now.
There is in fact no law.
Yes, absolutely correct.
Without consent.
Well, our belief in the law is what gives the law the power. The law itself doesn't exist. And what's interesting about it, if I would say I'm living in the state of Queensland, okay, that sounds interesting. Now, on the other hand, if anybody asks me what state I'm in, I say, well, you know what? I'm not feeling very good. My state at the moment isn't all that good, you know. So state means a state of mind. You can never be in the state of Queensland. It's a deception. So the state versus whoever, the Crown Corporation, the state versus whoever, that is a state of mind. That state cannot exist in reality.
And I think on some occasions, if not on many occasions, when a bluff has been called, whether the bluff was from a police officer or a judge or a magistrate, in some instances, or perhaps on many occasions, they have withdrawn or backtracked or retreated quite quickly when dealing with a person who knows.
Once the fraud is exposed or the bluff is exposed, all they can do is backtrack. They will never ever admit it. They will never ever say we've been wrong, we're sorry. They will always vacate and leave, and it's up to you to get closure. They will never fess up. If we get back to the document, which means, part of the reply that I got, we stopped with where they said learn how commerce works and how to operate within it. Thirdly, because you made someone aware of the fraudulent crimes of someone else, does not ever make them responsible for not interceding for you. Which I agree. If you are a private person or a private individual, as you claim, then you should know that no one can speak for you or defend your rights. Or a lawyer for that matter. You need to do it yourself. You see, because in law what it means, if I have somebody representing me in Black's law and all these dictionaries, legalese language, it means that they're representing an idiot. Which is interesting, because when Australian government solicitors have appointed somebody to act on behalf of the Crown, in legalese it means the Crown is an idiot. Which is correct. Which is quite interesting to look at it that way. So if you're represented by anybody, it simply means that the guy that appointed the representative is an idiot and is incompetent to handle his own affairs. So for us to come out of idiocracy or being treated as idiots, we have to present our affairs or be our own selves. If you are continuing, then you have to first check to see if your filings to become a private individual were done properly. Wow. And if they were, then you need to be certain that you obtained the debt notes to whatever account that is still being used. If you have obtained the debt notes, did you become the holder in due course over them? Basically, where did you go wrong when you did your process? You are still being treated and recognized as a public individual that has got privileges and not rights. That's very interesting. So, obviously they went on a bit about what I wouldn't say I accused them of it, I just told them of certain crimes, and yeah, they backpedaled a bit and said, no, it wasn't me. But yeah, let's look at it. Sorry you did not get the answers you were looking for. So they admit they didn't answer anything that I asked them about. They just gave me a solution. Perhaps you should think about being less vague with your questions when you discuss this in the future. You want to take control of what has got your debtor name, debtor in all caps, on it. Yet you don't want to operate within the system that is in place so that you can resolve any of your legal problems. Yes, government entities have manipulated the system in order to line their pockets. However, it can be undone. Liquidating accounts that were put in place of legal tender will not do that. The only way to accomplish what you believe to be the only answer would be to take the creation of a new government worldwide, or simply for an individual to remove themselves from the system as the debtor. So in commerce and in law, which is commerce is the bloody law, there's debtors and creditors. Done deal. You're either the one or the other.
Yes.
And therefore, when you go into court, when you're presenting yourself, when you're doing whatever, you walk through those doors as the guilty party. End of story. You're the debtor. You wake up on a ship, a vessel in commerce, and the captain wakes up and he's got a hangover. He's not feeling very well. And it doesn't matter what you do, whether it was right or wrong. He's going to make you do stuff. He's just going to make you do it. Whether you did it or didn't do it, it's completely irrelevant. Because this is where you are, because you walked onto that ship as the debtor and you took it for granted that whatever the captain tells you to do, you will do because you're on his vessel. And that means to get off the vessel, you should have never ever got onto the frickin' ship. And this is where we are. So we enter the system from birth as the debtor,
yes,
with the surname being the debtor in the account, and the house of the surname or the office of the surname being the debtor. And yet when the birth got registered and you get your second birth certificate, which is the creditor in commerce, which is the date of registration of the name the creditor office got created, but we never applied for that particular certificate, and we didn't know that it existed. So we get born as the debtor and we die as the debtor. We never ever become the creditor. So they say to me that, well, all statutes and regulations are based off of contracts. Statutes and regulations are based off of contracts. And those contracts are in fact voidable. The first step would be to remove yourself from being an employee of the corporate form of government. So we're all government employees as far as they're concerned. Okay. You have your own understanding of being defeated when in reality it appears that you are giving up because you understand the corruption, which we all do, without understanding how to obtain any remedy within the system. So there is a remedy within the system. We just don't know about it. It's just been concealed. Unfortunately, there is no way to get out of it without going through it. There are ways to operate within the system of commerce without being personally indebted to it. As for common law, yes, there is still common law. However, you need to seek your remedy administratively and not publicly. So this tells us that all the common law things we all want to fall back on has got nothing to do with the private sector or living in the private. And that's it. The Vatican, of course, is the vat ICANN, which is the holder of all corporations. The Crown Corporation, any corporation on planet Earth, is incorporated with the Vatican as the holder of all corporate estates, and all corporate trusts are held by the Vatican as an institution. The Vatican is not a person or anything, it's just another huge big corporation, but it is the mother company holding all the other corporations. And obviously this Canon 2057, anybody can just Google that and look it up, and you'll find heaps and heaps of references to it, and it's also off the Vatican website. Now, this is quite interesting, because there's a particular word here that pops up which says is guilty of fraud and fundamental breach of the fiduciary duties. Now, let's forget about the fraud for now. The fiduciary duty means your interest need to be put in front of their own. So if somebody is my fiduciary, they've got to meet my needs before I can meet my own needs. They've got to look after me. Government, or the private institution pretending to be a government, they took on the fiduciary duty, and they usurped the original government that actually was a de jure government that exists, that did all of that for us. But as trustees of the trust, they've got a duty towards us. And everything that we are paying for all the time should be coming from the trust fund that was created, as with them as the trustees, to pay for all our bills, all our fines, all the licensing, all the taxes. It's not our obligation. Those are their bills that they need to pay, not us. But they made us the debtor in the system through the birth certificate fraud, and out of that came the surname, which is the debtor in the trust account, which is what all this writing of how to write your name, the live life claim, and this complete process is all about. Absolutely, they hold that all the time, even if you don't exit the system from the private. But they, because of the role playing in court that they do, the magistrate is your fiduciary, but he reverses the role and he makes us the trustee. You see, because when they ask you what is your name, and you say your name, they write your name down on the court records in full, all capitals, all uppercase typing, which is not you, that's the corporation, and that is the trick that has been done in the court. Now, that's been covered very well by Romley and by the Rossa channel in the past. People can go back and relook at those videos. This is just the KV Act itself, obviously, that still looks like this. This is off the England's UK website. You can still look this one up. It's still legit, it's still standing, it's still valid, absolutely 100%. And Section 4 is the interesting one. Section 4 says, if the supposed dead man proved to be alive, then the title is revested. Action for mean profits with interest. And this is where the Canon 2057 comes in, and where the fraud comes in. Because these assets in trust, all the time that were held in trust, those assets are me and you. Our bodies, our corpses, our corporate entity has been held in trust as a bonded surety against which the currency in the system is being printed. So we are the collateral against the money that we spend all the time. We are the capital. And they traded upon our bodies and converted that energy into money that they profited from. They did stuff with that money without telling us about it, and traded upon our trust accounts. The profits that they made from those accounts should have been coming to us all the time as shareholders in the global estate. The minerals from the Australian mines should be come back into Australian soil. Do they? No. The garbage that gets exported to China and that we bought back, that we buy back from China as newly produced goods, why don't we produce it here? That is the whole system, is that you've got a foreign entity similar to a parasite sitting on top of Australian soil, sucking it dry. But we are responsible for that. We created that. We consented to that. But we can change it. We can take that contract and rescind it, cancel the contract, create a new trust, and in that case we will be looking at the next document, which is very interesting, with the steps of how to do that. As an example, all writing initially in the older languages and in the Eastern languages, all writing was usually done by the left hand, and the reason was that they would write from the right to the left.
Yes.
And they would write from the bottom upwards.
Yes.
And this is why in legislation and in Wikipedia and everywhere you do research, if you're looking for something, you go to the very last paragraph of whatever document you're busy working with. And the key of what you're researching will be at the end of the document, not somewhere in the beginning and not somewhere in the middle, because they have used and constructed documents and constructed sentences in such a way to tell us everything that we need to know. But the time that you're getting to the bottom of page 15, you've been indoctrinated with so many terminologies and things and whatever to deviate you off what you were actually really looking for. And the exit clause is always at the end. And then that's that. So in research and in encyclopedias and in dictionaries, everywhere, they've been doing this all the time. Now obviously the question is, who are they? They are the ones that we created by buying their brands, going to their schools, consenting to their authority over us. And we didn't have much of a choice up to now. Now that we know more, we can change it, and we can rescind the contracts and withdraw the consent and take control of our own lives. So yeah, with the sentencing, when you construct the sentence, there's terms and conditions on any couple of words that you combine, because it's open to the interpretation of that sentence. As an idea, I might write down a sentence in a role play game in which I want you to run around this building 15 times every morning. And you might, if you're an athlete, think, oh, this is absolutely very brilliant. You know, it's not a problem whatsoever. But if you're in a wheelchair, that would be a really unfair thing to expect from you. You see, and this is what I'm saying with the terms and conditions. They have to be clear. And this is where the deception of language come in. Now we're sitting at a point where they tell us we need to run 15 flippant times around the house. And some of us are in wheelchairs, some of us have only got one leg, some of us are athletes, and we're all bound by the same thing, which is what happened. So yeah, we've deviated slightly off the name. But in essence, nobody can give a name to anybody else, because once you've done that, it was your intellectual property that you owned for the time while you're on earth, that is used by which you can be called. You may call me by that name, that's totally okay, but I do not give you my name, because when I do that I don't have my own, and then I'm nothing and nobody, which is what they do in court. When they do the role play in court, the magistrate asks you what's your name, and you say what's your name, and then they are skin crawlers, and they crawl into your side of it, and then he becomes you and you becomes him. And this is the role reversal that they do. This is how the courts work. Now obviously you must never be in a court as a living entity. You can't be in a court. We'll cover that at some point in time. But essentially the name is that critical, that once they know your name, you're screwed. It's over, it's done, because you've given your name away, and you didn't have the right to do that. Now it's also why on the planet, as far as I know so far, and I don't speak extraterrestrial languages, I don't know what's happening in the rest of the universe, but there is no law yet on the planet that says that you must have a name whatsoever. And there's no law whatsoever that says that you must have a surname. So in my particular case, when I was born in Africa, in a country at that point in time known as Northern Rhodesia, which later became Zambia, it was a British colony. And at that point in time, obviously, what parents would normally do after a child is born. Now, born again, when I say born, I mean live born.
Yes.
The mother bore the baby, and it got born through being live born, not birthed. Because birthing is shipping terminology. And this is another deceptive word. When I say birth, how do I spell the word? Is it B-I-R-T-H? Or B-E-R-T-H. How do you know when I use the word, what is your date of birth? You don't know when they ask you over the phone for any security question and blah blah, which they do all the time, what is your date of birth? They're talking about the shipping term. They're talking about the birthing term. And the date of birth was only when the name got registered and the name got given out to the system and got recorded. And that's the interesting about the terminology using birth. We should be using the term born all the time. But what's very interesting, the mother obviously having given, having a live-born baby in hospital after what she's gone through, she's filling in forms, they're taking temperature, they're taking blood samples from the baby, they're doing vaccinations, and at that stage she's not really in a competent position to do important shit on documents. But they do that because there's records in the hospital. Now, those hospital records get created into a bond. And they're normally sold to either government entities or they're sold to the Vatican. That is the hospital records. Now, what a lot of people don't know, all foundling means a place where abandoned goods go to be discarded. So the child gets born, live born, and taken by the doctor being the guy that works for the shipping company. Which dock does he represent? And he takes the baby out of the water and holds it up so that it can't touch land, and puts it into maritime. And therefore it becomes abandoned goods, to separate it away from the mother and then give it back again to the mother, so that there's no bond. This is what happens in maternity hospitals. Now obviously it's a maternity ward, and a ward is isn't it like a prison term? When you're in a prison ward? Correct. And this is what happens. So by the time it gets to the documentation, that whole scenario has played itself out to where the child becomes abandoned goods. And that gets claimed, and that gets recorded, and that record gets sold and gets monetized as goods abandoned and taken by somebody that gave it up and left it behind. The hospital record, that would be the hospital record. Very often they will give the parents a copy of it, and of course they want that copy, and they want those things, they either get it from the hospital or from the parents when you go and you register the child. Now of course what nobody knew, especially with the older generation and our parents as well, registering anything means it's not yours anymore. Anything that's registered it's goodbye ownership, it's not yours. You get the license to use it, and you become the holder and the looking after that item by law, but not universal law, by legality. So once the child is registered, the parents are just the custodians looking after the child. It's not their child anymore. And this is what happens with birth registration. So the hospital bond gets created, that gets monetized, and that gets bought and sold to usually the Vatican or some government entity that buys that, and they trade upon it. And then again, the records that's been made with a live born, nobody's claimed that baby, nobody gave the baby a name, nobody said no, I'm not filling in a form. And the way that the forms are filled in is putting the name into form, and that has been done deceptively as well, using terminologies and the way that it's been written on the documents in italics, in bold, in blocks, in different things that were ticked off. It's something that's pre-filled in. It's not a blank sheet of paper that the mother starts to write out. So it's built and designed as an entrapment, so that the way that it's filled in on that form, the mother has discarded the child, because she doesn't know about the four-corner rule and how to do English grammar properly and how to construct sentences, and she just filled in the blocks. And usually there's often a block where there's a little cross where you're supposed to fill in stuff. The cross means dead, it's been crossed out. Essentially enough, within the system, if you would go to the government entities and you would look at records of hospitals and records of births, deaths and marriages and death certificates, you will see that this birth certificate and the death certificate has got the exact same number.
Interesting.
So they issue the death certificate at birth.
Yes.
Because they created a dead entity in maritime, and that is what happened. And that very same certificate stays with you throughout your life and becomes your death certificate. It's the identical same certificate. And if this is not true, why would the certificates have the exact same number? The Vatican, of course, is the Vatican, which is the holder of all corporations. The Crown Corporation, any corporation on planet Earth, is incorporated with the Vatican as the holder of all corporate estates, and all corporate trusts are held by the Vatican as an institution. The Vatican is not a person or anything, it's just another huge big corporation, but it is the mother company holding all the other corporations. And obviously this Canon 2057, anybody can just Google that and look it up, and you'll find heaps and heaps of references to it, and it's also off the Vatican website. It says is guilty of fraud and fundamental breach of the fiduciary duties. Now let's forget about the fraud for now. The fiduciary duty means your interest need to be put in front of their own. So if somebody is my fiduciary, they've got to meet my needs before I can meet my own needs. They've got to look after me. Government or the private institution pretending to be a government, they took on the fiduciary duty and they usurped the original government that actually was a de jure government that exists, that did all of that for us. But as trustees, of the trust, they've got a duty towards us. And everything that we are paying for all the time should be coming from the trust fund that was created, as with them as the trustees, to pay for all our bills, all our fines, all the licensing, all the taxes. It's not our obligation. Those are their bills that they need to pay, not us. But they made us the debtor in the system through the birth certificate fraud, and out of that came the surname, which is the debtor in the trust account, which is what all this writing of how to write your name, the live life claim, and this complete process is all about. All the time, even if you don't exit the system from the private. But they, because of the role playing in court that they do, the magistrate is your fiduciary. But he reverses the role and he makes us the trustee. You see, because when they ask you what is your name, and you say your name, they write your name down on the court records in full, all capitals, all uppercase typing, which is not you, that's the corporation, and that is the trick that has been done in the court. Now that's been covered very well by Romley and by the Rossa channel in the past. People can go back and relook at those videos. This is just the KV Act itself, obviously, that still looks like this. This is off the England's UK website. You can still look this one up. It's still legit, it's still standing, it's still valid, absolutely 100%. And section 4 is the interesting one. Section 4 says, if the supposed dead man proved to be alive, then the title is revested. Action for mean profits with interest. And this is where the Canon 2057 comes in, and where the fraud comes in. Because these assets in trust, all the time that were held in trust, those assets are me and you. Our bodies, our corpses, our corporate entity has been held in trust as a bonded surety against which the currency in the system is being printed. So we are the collateral against the money that we spend all the time. We are the capital. And they traded upon our bodies and converted that energy into money that they profited from. They did stuff with that money without telling us about it and traded upon our trust accounts. The profits that they made from those accounts should have been coming to us all the time as shareholders in the global estate. The minerals from the Australian mines should be come back into Australian soil. Do they? No. The garbage that gets exported to China and that we bought back, that we buy back from China as newly produced goods, why don't we produce it here? That is the whole system. Is that you've got a foreign entity similar to a parasite sitting on top of Australian soil, sucking it dry. But we are responsible for that. We created that. We consented to that. But we can change it. We can take that contract and rescind it, cancel the contract, create a new trust, and in that case we will be looking at the next document, which is very interesting, with the steps of how to do that. First of all, this is on the internet, or from the internet. It is the Australian government's page from the Treasury, and it's pretty current, it's today's date, and this will show you documents relating to registration with the Security and Exchange Commission of the Australian government as a privately owned American company. And this is pretty interesting, because here it is, clearly stating that the government is a privately owned American company, and it's on the government Treasury's website off the page, treasury.government.au, straight ahead. So now it's corporate, there is no government. Government obviously means, govern means to control, and ment means mind. So government equals mind control. It's got no authority. It's got nothing to do with real authority. Real authority is vested in something under common law called a jury. And a jury would be a group of guys, maybe like 10 people, that make a decision, and that decision that they make should be unanimous. In other words, if one of the 10 doesn't agree with the outcome, there's no decision. And that's different from democracy. Democracy is that's mob rule. That's what pirates do on a ship when they select a new captain. 6 guys says we want that guy, and 4 says no ways, but it doesn't matter, because 6 is a bigger number than 4. And this is what they deceived us, that we've all got the right to vote and the right to democracy. Democracy is bullshit. There's no such thing. It's a lynch mob. And the world fell for it, hook, line and sinkers. With, oh, we can vote, let's choose a government, let's do this. What we didn't know, there is no government, it was just a corporation. Just a privately owned American company, which has happened since 1933 across the planet with every country on earth except, I think, North Korea and Iran at the moment are the only two remaining independents, as I mentioned earlier at some point. So this incorporates all of us as citizens of a country. Like what? How can you be a citizen of a country under a government when the government is an American company? There's something wrong with this picture. So you aren't a citizen of anything. You're a citizen, you're a member of a corporation. There we go. You see, anything attached to a ship, like relationship, citizenship, friendship, whatever. The reason they call that ship thing at the end is because the bloody thing can sink. You're on the water. You're not on land. So anything that you're doing to do with a ship is clearly written in maritime and clearly written in water law. Now this is where the all caps entity comes from, because you can't interact as a living being or a man, a woman, with a corporation or a dead corpse, because it's like you in the backyard and you're kicking a dead dog and you want this thing to get up and run. It ain't going to do it, it can't. But yet they want us to think that we are able to interact with a corporation. You can't interact with a corporation, there's no jurisdiction. But you have to consent, and you've got to, under deceptive grammar, rules of grammar, use of grammar, you've got to pretend that you are the corporation and you're acting on behalf of the corporation. And that is what they did with the bond, the birth bond, is to bond you into slavery and to sell that document as a bonded stock. That's why they call the stock exchange stocks and bonds. We are the stock that's bonded on the stock exchange. But they need to use a different name from who we really are. They can't use our real name, our Christian name, or our first name, given name, because it's not the name of a corporation. So they incorporated our name, used that entity in a different way of writing it in all capital letters, in all uppercase text. And they've told all of us that this is who you are, that's your identity, that's your identity document, that's your passport, that's your driver license, that's your gun license, whatever, which was all bullshit. It never ever had anything to do with you. That is the name of a corporation that is completely and separate from you. The interesting thing of it is that, do you have an interest in that corporation? Well, I suppose so, because you're using your lifetime and your life sweat working, not knowing that you are not that entity. So you're being harvested, you're being traded upon, slaved, enslaved, bonded without your consent, without transparent, without disclosure. Because if there's in a contract no full transparency and no real disclosure, the contract is null and void.
Yes.
So technically all the birth certificate bonds that were created, that our parents so lovingly thought they're doing it for God and country or whatever, all of that at the end of the day is bullshit, and all of it is fraudulent. The interesting thing is it's very hard to prove that, because who knows, how can you remember when you were 1 week old maybe, or 3 days old, what happened?
No, of course not.
No, and my parents are dead, so where's the witness? Okay, how has this been conveyed to us? So we're on our own. We need to go into this mission and search for the truth, search for the reality, and in that way eventually we'll get to the bottom of this rabbit hole, and then we can fix it. And it's easier to fix than what most people think. Not that I'm saying everybody should go and do this. You need to do a lot of research, and nobody must ever believe a word I'm saying. To get out of the control of government entities, or out of the authority which they don't have over us without our consent.
Is this the same as going post-liminary or attaining a post-liminary status?
It's exactly the same as post-liminary status, except that the post-liminary concept is beautiful, because you're just saying that you're not choosing sides. I'm neutral. This is a war out there. These people are engaged in commerce. They're competing. They're fighting against each other, and they're killing each other, and they're hurting a lot of people. And all you do when you go post-liminary says, I don't want to play. I'm neutral. I'm peaceful, I'm neutral, I'm non-belligerent, and this is me, okay? So you do whatever you want. I do not choose sides. And that way is the only way to change the system 100%. is to walk away from the two polarities, left wing, right wing, okay? Doesn't the left and the right wing belong to the same bird?
Yes, it would be seen by some as the two wings of the one bird.
Yeah, and when you vote, you register to vote, which is rather interesting, because doesn't matter which party you vote for, it's just a new CEO of the same company. There's nothing else out there. In all the corporations, it's just companies that you're voting for. And they tell it you clearly, and this is where everything is hidden in plain sight. They tell you in the advertisements before election, and this country is going into election soon, they say to you clearly on the media and TV and everywhere, register to vote, or to vote, register. What it means, if your name is on the voters roll, you have voted. They tell you register to vote. You don't have to vote. Register to vote. So once you've registered to vote, you've incorporated yourself into the corporation. You're part and parcel of that company. Doesn't matter who you vote for, because it's the same entity. You just have to register with the company as an employee of that company. So we are all government employed as far as government is concerned. None of us are, even if you're working for a company, how many companies on earth are there? If you think very carefully, it's a trick question. If you think about businesses and things out there, how many companies are there on the planet?
Well, there would be tens of thousands, potentially millions, depending on the size of the company you're referring to.
There's one single company.
One.
The Crown Corporation. It's the only real company.
Across
every single other one of them that is registered as a company has forfeited those assets to the Crown Corporations. The Crown controls all of that. There's no such thing as an independent business. You can't be in business as an independent. You can be in trade, but you cannot be in commerce. Because trade is private and commerce is public. Commerce is government and trade is outside of government. And trade works on donations and fees, not on prices. So if I would be charging you a fee to do this interview with me, that would be completely, totally out of commerce 100%. Because it's a fee that we agree upon. And if you don't want to pay that fee, then there's no agreement. Or you can give me a donation, and that is up to you how much you want to give me. But the interesting thing is there's no price attached to what I do. And that takes you out of commerce. But as long as you're still talking pricing and you're still talking selling stuff, we're screwed.